integrity first, searching for self, and excellence in all they do.
Well, thank you all for being here today. My dad would have really gotten a kick out of the whole pomp and circumstance of everything that he stood for, everything that he valued in life, and he was such a patriot and loved this country so much. And so, anyway, thank you all for doing all of that. So, my brother and mother and I, and my family, sister-in-law, and my husband wanted to just say a few words. There's some seats up here for anyone who feels like they need to sit, or anyway, if anyone would like to sit, please do. We've got plenty.
Come on now, you and me.
Anyway, we just wanted to, I'll start, and then my brother's going to say a few words, and then if anyone has anything they want to share, any memory of my dad, you know, we're going to open it up, no pressure, but, you know, he was many things, but the word that comes to my mind the most is unforgettable. You know, it could be good or bad now. He was a character for sure, but once you met him, you really didn't forget him. I noticed that throughout my whole life, people who met him, even briefly, would remember him. Part of it was his looks, and although, as you can see from the pictures, he doesn't look, you'll know, anything really unusual, there's very few times I've ever seen baby pictures of someone where, like, literally as an infant, you can look at their picture and say, oh, that's that person. I look completely different, my brother looks completely different. My dad, 100%, you can look at it as literally, I mean, a baby in the crib, and you can tell that it was him. So I guess it started the unforgettable part of him. He was sort of the miracle child for his parents. So I don't know if many people know this, but his mother was 39 when he was born, and his father was 50 when he was born. So they had my uncle 6 years before that, and they'd been trying to have another baby and couldn't. This was well before the fertility treatments and all that, obviously. And anyway, so he was sort of like a miracle child for my grandparents. But anyway, he was a little bit spoiled because of that, I think. You know, anyway, that kind of goes through the rest of his life. I think he just expected that things would always go well for him. But speaking of babies, so he was this cherished little baby. My brother and I have always had this joke in the family that there can only be one baby in the family. And when we were born, that role had already been taken. So, you know, Dad could be a little bit, you know, on the baby side. He liked to get his way. You know, one time with, I'll just give you an example, we remember this actually several times. We'd be out to dinner and they wouldn't have what he wanted, or I don't know, some other circumstance would happen. We didn't go to the restaurant he wanted. He'd actually sometimes pound his fist on the table like a juvenile. So he could be a little bit babyish at times, but that was part of his charm. It was always in good humor. One of the things that I admired most about my dad was the way his brain worked. I mean, anybody who knew him knew he was obviously very intelligent, but he had the kind of intelligence to think outside the box and really look at things at a different perspective and solve problems in ways that most of us, myself included, couldn't ever think of. You know, he was a natural seeker of knowledge. He was always trying to better himself and learn things. Never really, growing up, saw my dad almost never sitting in front of a television watching TV. He was always reading books or tinkering with things or fixing things or out in the yard. I mean, he was always doing something. He never really sat still and idle. Part of this was, I think, self-driven in him. When he was 7 years old, I don't know what you were doing at 7, but I wasn't doing what he did. So at 7 years old, his parents had a telephone, and he decided he was going to take apart the telephone and rebuild it from scratch, which he did at 7 years old. And you think, well, maybe his dad was technical and helped him. No, my grandfather could barely screw in the light bulb. So all that knowledge, he was self-trained. I remember he has this book, which I cherish. It's like something like electronics for the kid or for a young boy or something. But anyway, he really loved that book, and that taught him a lot of the basics in electronics, you know, helping the rest of his life. You know, even in his 30s, he was still seeking knowledge. I mean, most of you know, knew my dad, knew he loved to travel and see the world, but part of that was also from his study of religion. So like when he was in his 30s, Dad decided I was going to study every major religion in the world. And I'm talking, obviously Christianity and different, parts of that, Judaism, Islam, but he was studying Buddhism and Taoism. I mean, he really went through and studied all of them. I think he opened his mind. He was always a very open person and looking at other cultures. So even before he died, like this was weeks before he died, he couldn't do much at that point. He, couldn't stand up, but he'd be in his wheelchair, and we had like an iPad there, and we play different things for him. He was literally watching astrophysics classes, like literally weeks before he died. So, he may not have been able to physically do a lot of things, but he was still seeking that knowledge, and I really admired that. My brother is a lot like that, and I should take that as a lesson. I can learn a few things myself. But so I mentioned that, he thought outside the box. So one of my favorite stories. So I was sneaking out of the house to wake mom and dad up by starting the car. I thought it was smart. So one day I roll the car down the driveway, I go in, the car starts right up. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe it was just a glitch. Next night, I get smarter. Okay, I'm not going to roll the car already down the drive. I'll just try to start it up, right there. So it's totally dead again. Next morning, it starts again, and this goes back and forth, and I'm just like, okay, I don't understand, like, is there some mist in the air at night that's making the car not start? So finally, I said something to my brother about it. Dad, so, love something else you couldn't hear. So one of the things I loved about my dad, that he was so easy to know what he liked. I mean, I can give you a whole list, which I'm going to tell you a few, but most people, you ask them what their favorite color is or what their favorite food or whatever, they're not thinking about it. No, my dad made it perfectly obvious of every single thing he liked. So if I was making an altar for my dad for Day of the Dead, I would have, first of all, I'd have a statue of a dog on there. My dad always said, I will have a dog sitting on my grave when I die. But he always said that. So he loved dogs. He loved food. The dad liked to eat. And he liked specific foods. My dad liked oysters and shortbread cookies and cheesecake and scallops and M&Ms. Later in life, they had to be almond M&Ms, but they were always at least peanut M&Ms. But anyway, it was very easy to know what he liked. Music. He loved music, classical music. I couldn't sing a tune, hold a tune. Christmas, he'd go to church and sing, and we're all like, but he loved music. In fact, he was a DJ in Vietnam. I don't know how many people know this, but he was a classical music DJ while he was in Vietnam. But that's really what brought him to mom. So, mom being a musician, his love of music and her, that really tied them together. And they always had that. So my dad, the day he died, anytime he got upset or frustrated, we'd always play the classical music for him. He loved that. Another thing about him is that he loved various things, but one of the things he probably holds the world record for is watching the original 1987-89 version of The Little Mermaid. I don't know if you know this, but again, it's really, I think, the music that he liked so much about this, but as he got older, he literally watched it every, and the answer was simply, it makes me happy. And like, how do you argue with that, right? It makes me happy. But I think a lot of it was the music, and this story just made him happy, I guess. But anyway, but yeah, a lot of kids get fascinated with the movie and maybe watch it for a year. Now, this probably went on 6 or 7, maybe even 8 years that he watched Little Mermaid every day. So I think he probably does hold the world record for that. So other things that, loved is, like, we all know he loved travel and, running and photography, and he used to play tennis and scuba diving and hiking. Hiking was the real love of his. In fact, again, always we've known what he wanted to do with his ashes. He would tell us since we were a little kid. He once, I thought Chucky, I may try to join him, climb the highest mountain we can get to and scatter his ashes. So that's where that will eventually be, on top of some mountain, which I think Chucky has probably chosen which mountain. Hopefully I can get myself up there. But anyway, better get it before we get over. But anyway, thank you for listening to my ramblings here. But yeah, like I said, and I started this, but that is definitely memorable and unforgettable. And one last thing to just talk about him a little bit is that Dad was a person who I really admired, and the universe. I unforgettable photos of us.
I'm in the trailer with him, and I find it's got like notes on every page. And he's like, he's really studying, studying thoroughly, which kind of surprised me. Most parents kind of blow off stuff with their 17-year-old son. Comes up with things. Definitely opened us to look at it and seriously read it and study it. Dad took me on backpacking trips from the time I was a little kid. I think I was 9 years old. One trip we went up there, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, we got to climb a mountain." And so I told him that I wanted to climb Mount Elbert, the highest one in Colorado. And it turned out to be like a 22-mile round trip from where we were parked, and we went to go up that. About a half mile from the top, my fingernails turned.
Sorry, no, keep going.
Okay.
Sorry.
About a half mile from the top, my fingernails started turning purple, and this medic from Denver found me and got me moving down the mountain. I went down to the altitude well enough. Came up with a plan. We went back and came up to the top, and came back down. Thing Dad and I did in Colorado took me to school photography at Gray. I really wasn't into photography that much at the time. I thought it was kind of neat, but I didn't know much about it. And we did this photo school, and it really opened up a new hobby for me that's lasting a lifetime. We were with professional photographers and shooting pictures, and so I got to learn, a lot of their techniques in the same exact